Okay, this video is going to show how to remove various nails and screws and how to fill the holes. This is being done for painting a garage, but it could be used for anything. Just some of the tools we're going to use. First thing is a pry bar. Second, we've got what I call a wrecking bar. Some people call that a gooseneck. Here's a set of channel locks, vice grips. Also probably going to need a hammer, various pieces of wood, something like a 1x4, a 2x4, and then a small piece of plywood. Also going to need, in order to repair the holes, we're going to need, for really small holes, we can just use a caulking gun. The problem with caulking is you might get a little shrinkage afterwards, so there might be a little bit of a dip, but for small holes that's okay. For larger holes, we're going to go ahead and use a putty knife and some interior-exterior putty. Of course, we also got a drill driver to be able to remove screws that are still in good shape, and you can have various bits that'll fit the various screws that you need to remove. So the first thing we're going to do is just remove a simple nail, roughly less than 2 inches. And in this one, all we're going to do is take our pry bar. We're going to reach up and we're just going to pull that nail out, and it should just come out nicely. The good thing is about a pry bar like this, it's got a wide surface, and so it distributes the force across the board and tends not to leave any dents. If you have a very soft surface, here there's some insulation, what you can do is you can put a piece of plywood down, and the plywood will distribute the weight across the surface, and that way you can pull a nail out without denting the soft material. Otherwise we would have put a big dent in the soft material. For a larger nail, such as this one here, typically more than 2 or maybe 3 inches, we can use the wrecking bar. Sometimes you'll run into an issue though, is you can't get a grip on the head because the nail is sticking out too far. If that's the case, you can go ahead and use a piece of wood of appropriate thickness. In this case I'm using a 2x4, which will allow me to fill up this space, lift the leverage point out a ways, and that way I can go ahead and pull out that nail. So that works pretty well. The next one we have here is this particular nail. Somebody's tried to pull it out before, and the head is actually broken off of this nail. So you try and hook onto it with something, and there's just no way that you can grip it. So in that instance, you can take your channel locks and close them up so that they're the smallest they can be. Grab a hold of the nail and just squeeze hard, and you can pull that out. Okay? That's using your channel locks. If you're trying to remove a screw, of course, put the proper bit in your drill driver and just remove it correctly, so it comes out nicely. The problem that you may have is this particular screw down here at the bottom. Let me adjust that. This particular one, it's stripped out, and we can't get it out. So what we're going to do on that one is we're just going to simply take our vice grips, and turning this knurled knob at the end here, we're going to close them up so they're just slightly smaller than the diameter of the screw. And we're just going to grab onto that screw, squeeze tightly, and you'll hear them snap into place. And once we've done that, we can just put the vice grips on and go ahead and turn that screw on out. And even though the head is stripped out, we got a grip on it and we're able to unscrew it. Actually, we could have also used these vice grips, sorry, to release the screw. You just push this little lever here, open that up, and then you may have to pry it apart a little bit like that. So when we removed this one nail that didn't have the head on it, note that you could have also hooked your vice grips on and pulled it out using the vice grips as well if you wanted to. Very similar to how we did it with the channel locks. Okay, so now we've got some holes here, and we want to fill some of these holes because we're going to paint. So the first thing to realize is sometimes when you pull a screw or nail out, there's some of the wood sticking up. And so in this case, what we're going to do is we're just going to hammer it down. If it's sticking up too much, you can also run a putty knife across it. We just want to make sure nothing is sticking up. Then we're going to go ahead and if we select one of these holes, typically anything smaller than maybe a pencil eraser, about 1/4 of an inch, we can go ahead and use caulking. We'll probably get a little bit of a dip. For our purposes, that's okay. If you're doing fine furniture, you would never do it this way. So we want to squeeze some caulking into the hole, and we want to make sure we push it on in. Once we've done that, we want to run either our finger or a putty knife. I'm just going to use my finger. You go across once, and you can see there's still a bit of a dip because I went in this direction. All the silicone caulking is on this side, so we're going to go back and forth a little bit to make sure that it's pushed up to all sides of the hole. And if we didn't get quite enough on, we can always go ahead and put a little bit more on. It helps if your finger's a little bit wet, and if the caulking is sticking up a little bit beyond, that's perfectly fine. So that worked out well for that one. Now what if we have a really large hole? So in this case, we've got something definitely bigger than a pencil eraser. So we're going to go ahead and open up our putty. In this case, we've got an interior-exterior putty. It's a little hard, but that's okay. This will work. What we're going to do is we're going to work it into the hole. Now you see when I go across once, it gathers on the side in the direction that I was going, but I've still got a big hole. So it's important that you go in all directions to get it built up on the sides. Get a little bit more putty if you need to. Sometimes when you push it in one side, it pops out the other side. So it's important to try and move it across. And what will happen is, if you can't get it to be flat, what you might have to actually do, if you can't get it to completely fill the hole, what you might have to actually do is do one coat and then a couple hours later do another one to fill in the rest. And there we have it. That's the way to remove lots of different kinds of nails and screws, and to go ahead and fill the holes afterwards.